Loki, pronounced Loki, is the wily trickster god of Norse mythology. While treated as a nominal member of the gods, Loki occupies a highly ambivalent and ultimately unique position among the gods, giants, and the other kinds of spiritual beings that populate the pre-Christian Norse religion. His father is the giant Farbauti, whose Old Norse name Farbauti means cruel striker. His mother is Laufey, the meaning of which is unknown, or Nal, whose Old Norse name Nal means needle. Laufey or Nal could be a goddess, a giantess, or something else entirely. The surviving sources are silent on this point. Loki is the father by the giantess Angerboda, whose Old Norse name Angerboda means anguish boding of hell, the goddess of the underworld. Jörmungandr, the great serpent who slays Thor during Ragnarok, and Fenrir, the wolf who bites off one of the hands of Tyr and who kills Odin during Ragnarok. Hardly a reputable brood, to say the least. As we'll see below, Loki demonstrates a complete lack of concern for the well-being of his fellow gods, a trait which could be discerned in vague outline merely by considering these offspring of his. With his proper wife Sigyn, whose Old Norse name means friend of victory, he also has a son named Nari or Nafi, whose name might mean corpse. Loki often runs afoul, not only of societal expectations, but also of what we might call the laws of nature. In addition to the progeny listed above, Loki is also the mother, yes, the mother of Sleipnir, Odin's shamanic horse, whom Loki gave birth to after shape-shifting into a mare and courting the stallion Svadilfari, as is recounted in the tale of the fortification of Asgard. In the tales, Loki is portrayed as a scheming coward who cares only for shallow pleasures and self-preservation. He's by turns playful, malicious and helpful, but he's always irreverent and nihilistic. For example, in the tale of the kidnapping of Idun, Loki, by his recklessness, ends up in the hands of a furious giant, Thiazi, who threatens to kill Loki unless he brings him the goddess Idun. Loki complies in order to save his life, and then finds himself in the awkward position of having the gods threaten him with death unless he rescues Idun. He agrees to this request for the same base motive, shifting his shape into that of a falcon and carrying the goddess back to Asgard in his talons. Thiazi pursues him desperately in the form of an eagle, but having almost caught up with Loki as he nears his destination, the gods light a fire around the perimeter of their fortress. The flames catch Thiazi and burn him to death, while Idun and Loki reach the halls of the gods safely. Loki ultimately comes to the aid of the gods, but only to rectify a calamity for which he himself is responsible. This theme is repeated in numerous tales, such as in the creation of Thor's hammer and the aforementioned The Fortification of Asgard. After Thiazi's death, the giant's daughter, Skadi, arrives in Asgard demanding restitution for the slaying of her father. One of her demands is that the gods make her laugh, something which only Loki is able to do. To accomplish this, he ties one end of a rope to the beard of a goat and the other end to his testicles. Both he and the goat squawk and squeal as one pulls one way and the other pulls the other way. Eventually he falls over in Skadi's lap, and the giantess can't help but laugh at such an absurd spectacle. Here, Loki once again comes to the aid of the gods, but simply by being silly and outlandish, not by accomplishing any feat that a Viking-age Scandinavian would have found to be particularly honourable. Loki is perhaps best known for his malevolent role in the death of Balder. After the death of the beloved god Balder is prophesied, Balder's mother, Frigg, secures a promise from every living thing to not harm her son. Well, almost everything. No such oath is obtained from the mistletoe, which the gods think too small and safe a thing to harm Baldur. Upon discovering this omission, Loki carves a mistletoe spear, places it in the hands of the blind god Hod, and instructs him to throw it at Baldur. Hod, not knowing the origin of the weapon, complies, and Baldur is impaled and dies. The god Hermod rides Sleipnir to the underworld and implores Hel to release Baldur, pointing out how beloved he is by all living things. Hel retorts that if this is so, then it shouldn't be difficult to compel every being in the world to weep for Baldur. and should this happen, the dead god would be released from the grave. Every living thing does indeed cry for Baldur's return, with one sole exception, a frost-hearted giantess named Thok, thanks, who's almost certainly Loki in disguise, so Baldur must remain with Hel. For his many crimes against them, the gods eventually forge a chain from the entrails of Loki's son Nafi and tie him down to 3 rocks inside a cave. A venomous serpent sits above him, dripping poison onto him. Loki's apparently very faithful and loving wife, Sigyn, sits at his side with a bowl to catch the venom. But when the bowl becomes full, of course, she has to leave her husband's side to pour it out. When this happens, the drops of venom that fall onto him cause him to writhe in agony, and these convulsions create earthquakes, and in this state he lies until breaking free at Ragnarok. For the centuries that Norse mythology has been a subject of scholarly study, scholars have been unable to explain the meaning of Loki's name in any convincing way. Most have simply thrown their hands up and declared the meaning of his name to be unknown and probably unknowable. Recently, however, the philologist Eldar Heider may have solved this puzzle. In his research into Nordic folklore from periods more recent than the Viking Age, Heider noticed that Loki often appears in contexts that liken him to a knot on a thread. In fact, in later Icelandic usage, the common noun Loki even means knot or tangle. Spiders are sometimes referred to as Loki in a metaphorical sense, as their webs are compared to the fish nets, which are made from a series of knots and loops that Loki crafts in certain surviving Viking Age myths. From all of this, the most straightforward meaning of Loki's name would seem to be knot or tangle. This proposed meaning of Loki's name powerfully resonates with his role in Norse mythology in 2 ways. First, it points to his role as a maker of nets, both literal fish nets and metaphorical nets in the form of his cunning schemes that trap the gods in perilous situations. Second, it could indicate his being the knot in the otherwise straight thread of the gods and their world, the fatal flaw that ultimately brings about their demise. Even though Loki is in some sense a god, no traces of any kind of worship of Loki have survived in the historical record. Is this any wonder, given that his character is virtually the antithesis of traditional Norse values of honor, loyalty and the like, and that he is ultimately a traitor to the divinities the Norse held in such reverence?